Hello ជំរាបសួរ
អ្នកសួរបងប្អូនខ្ញុំចូលមកចាំតិចណាគឺមានអ្នកចូលមកបន្តទៀត Hello everyone welcome good evening we are going to give a few minutes maybe a few seconds for people to come in. Okay, thank you for coming on time. Hello everyone, welcome everyone. I might do my yeah. Hello everyone, welcome.
ជំរាបសួរបងជំរាបសួរ
អ្នកសួរបងប្អូនអរគ្នាជំរាបសួរចាំតិចណាពីព្រោះមានអ្នកបងប្អូនយើងកំពុងតែចូលមកជំរាបសួរបងប្អូន
Hi Jenny
Hi, hello. Okay, you guys see me now?
I hope everyone seeing each other. We are dealing with technical. I think we are okay, right? We are seeing each other, right?
Okay, I can see you now.
Good. We are dealing with Zoom technology. Welcome everyone. Good evening.
Hi Jenny, it's Tui. I'm actually outside waiting for my car to with the brakes, so repairing the brakes. So I have my video off.
Okay, that's
but
okay.
I'm zooming in.
That's okay. Thank you for coming.
សំទោសវីដេអូខ្ញុំ off too ព្រោះខ្ញុំបើកឡាន
ចា
ដល់ដល់ផ្ទះ
អីទេ
Thêm cònចូល
អរគុណ
អរគុណបងប្អូនអរគ្នា
ហើយយន្តរា
Hi, how are you?
មានអ្នកខ្លះកំពុងតែចូល so people are still coming in, so we give another minute. We can start in a minute. អរគុណបងប្អូនដែលបានចូលរួម are we okay with the time? People are still coming in, right?
Yes, we're okay. If you want, you can start in about 30 seconds. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, 30 seconds. It's just very short. But people, I see people popping in still. So let's give another 30 seconds. I see the popping just keep coming. Numbers still keep going up. So អរគុណបងប្អូនចឹងយើងចាប់ដើមទៅเนาะចឹងជំរាបសួរណាបងប្អូនអរគ្នា Thank you. Good evening everyone. Welcome welcome to our group. I would say first meeting about this issue. So I just want to welcome you, especially it's a good sunny day and especially it's dinner time. So thank you for your time. So I believe that many of you know me. My name is Jenny S, and I believe that back some of you remember me back in when I was working at Refugee Women's Alliance in the women's program, empowering women. It was an honor and privilege that I was in the women program, and today I'm still talking about this topic. So wow, it's been a long time when I talk about community work back, especially in the women's issue. 30 years, can you believe it? 30 years, and we are still talking about this issue, this topic. I remember my baby girl was that I brought it to work at Refugee Women's Alliance is now grown. She's serving our country in the U.S. Army. I cannot be more than proud than having, a young woman growing and just live her life and do the best she can to live her dream life. So and here I am. As time goes by, we are not getting younger. And I feel sometimes trapped in between generations. My parents getting old, and as you all know, for the past few years, even before COVID, I decided to stay home to pay attention to their needs. But I think we all need to play this role. It's very important that we need to connect people, connect generations. The needs are still there for our community. So we need to connect the dots. As you can see, the dots in the globe, we need to play that role. And we all here today, tonight, we are serving that purpose, that we need to connect people into the service and the program that we all care about issues. So as you can see, this topic here. Before we go in here, I'd like to see, let's see who are in this room, in this call. If you, as we all wearing different hats at different times, if you see or consider yourself as a community leader, would you just raise your hand? I know that many of you are so humble. We know that we have some representation from our local government, City of Seattle. Anyone from City of Seattle, would you just raise your hand, please? How about the state, our state representation from the state? Do you have anyone? So I know that many of you have not raised your hand. You are so humble. You're playing a very important role in our community. You are here, it's very important. That's count, that we care, and you wanted to contribute to the change, positive change in our community. So thank you for your participation. Oh, I just want to let you know that this session is being recorded for our documentation. Hope that everyone is okay with that. And I'm sure that you will have a lot of questions as we get into the topic. I am going to ask you to just hold on to the end. We have a session, Q&A sessions at the end. And you may also type in your questions in the chat room, okay? And we will try to answer all your questions toward the end. So to continue on, I would like to point out this one team member, Polly Woodbury. I just got to meet her within this group, and she's very dedicated. I saw her in Cambodia, she zoomed in. I saw her in somewhere in the middle of her trip, she zoomed in. So I'm so glad to see a young person like you who are so committed and passionate about social justice, social change. And I'm sure that we all here playing that role. You are here meaning that you wanted to support and advocate for the important things that we don't want to see. We want the safety and the better for ourselves and for others around us. So please welcome Polly, take it over. I'm sure that you have things to cover as well. So thank you all for joining. Thank you.
Yes, Akun, Jenny, Akun Chraun. So today, thank Aknia. Hello, everyone. My name is Polly Woodbury. I am from Tacoma. I recently studied and worked in Seattle. And for the last 3 months, I've been living in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. So I'm so excited that we have such a big turnout today. Just as Jenny went over, we have a lot of important topics to cover. And before we get started, we have a special message from the Washington State Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. And if you don't know, she is the first South Asian American woman elected to the US House of Representatives. And not only is Congresswoman Jayapal a leader on immigration and labor rights, She also supported a global demining program. So that's like uprooting and taking out the landmines globally. And that program also had a critical program in Cambodia. So I just that to share that her work is not just local to Washington, but also global. And that is very similar to the work that we do. Usually it's local and global, and it's hard to separate the two. So without further ado, Sumait will help with showing the video of Pramila Jayapal's message.
Thank you, Polly. And I just want to say shout out, thank you, Councilmember Jeannie Powell, for being with us tonight and this evening. Thanks for spending your time with us.
I'm Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, and I'm proud to serve Washington's 7th Congressional District in the House of Representatives, where I also serve as chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. As someone who came to this country alone, who went on to start the largest immigrant rights group in Washington state, who is the first South Asian American woman to ever be elected to the House of Representatives, and who is one of only 85 women of color to ever serve in Congress, it is such an honor to join you all today. I want to first thank you for opening up this conversation to highlight the dangers of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. These are literally life or death issues, but too often they're swept under the rug. I want you to know that here in Congress, we're taking major steps to fight back against gender-based violence. Just last month, we passed legislation that was signed into law to close loopholes and ensure that those convicted of domestic violence cannot access firearms. And earlier this year, my bill, the Ending Forced Arbitration of Sexual Assault and Harassment Act, was also signed into law. This legislation will ensure that survivors of sexual assault and harassment aren't silenced and can make their own decisions about how to seek justice. And while these two bills exemplify the work that we're doing, they are just a first step towards ending gender-based violence in communities across this country. We have the power to fight back against gender-based violence, but it takes all of us using our voices. So thank you for coming together today to stand up for what is right and just. And please note that as you all do this critical work in our communities, I will be fighting right alongside you in the halls of Congress.
Wonderful. And so that message for me just shows that we are not alone in this work of dismantling gender-based violence. So it's just a reminder that you're not alone. I know there may be days that we may feel lonely, but you're never alone, and there's always someone that you can turn to. So with that, next up is Sophia.
Thank you, Polly, for introducing the Congresswoman. Good evening, community. My name is Sophia S, and I am one of the cohort members of the Spean Rajana gender-based violence team. My background is in social work and community organizing, and I'm happy to be here with all of you. I would like to introduce Lauren Vlas from the Washington State Attorney's General Attorney's Office, and who also helps with the Office Sexual Assault Coordinate Community Response Task Force. So Lauren, welcome to our forum. It would be wonderful to hear and learn from you about this task force and how communities like ours can continue to work with your office and your efforts. And I'll let you have the floor. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sophia. I'm going to share my screen here and hope that this works. Okay. That did not work the way I wanted it to. Let's see. I did practice this part, so let's hope that it's okay. Are you seeing a PowerPoint slide?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Let's see, is it full screen? I can't tell.
Not yet.
Large enough? Okay, perfect. All right, good evening. Thank you so much for the invitation to share some information, to join you this evening. My name is Lauren Vlas. I use she, her pronouns. I am a policy analyst in the Attorney General's office. I get to work with two multidisciplinary task forces that the Attorney General administers, both related to sexual assault. And I have quite a bit of information to share tonight, so I'm glad to provide clarifications. Please feel free to interrupt me. Let me know if I can clarify information. Otherwise, I'm just going to go right through. Do I have about 15 minutes? Is that right? I don't want to. Does that sound okay? Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Okay, so the creation of the Sexual Assault Coordinated Community Response Task Force stemmed from a recommendation of the Sexual Assault Forensic Examination Best Practices Advisory Group. That's very long. We call it the SAFE Advisory Group. They are responsible for overseeing the testing of the backlog of sexual assault kits. And they recommended the creation of the Coordinated Community Response Task Force in order to fill in some gaps that were missing from the work of the SAFE Advisory Group, and to advise on mainly the creation of some model protocols. So substitute Senate Bill 6158 in the 2020 legislative session established the Coordinated Community Response Task Force. Members met for the first time in December of 2020 and are required to report final recommendations to the legislature and governor on December 1st of this year. And the task force will expire on December 31st. There are 25 appointed members of the task force representing survivors, law enforcement, prosecutors, judges, the legislature, local government, medical professionals, community sexual assault programs, both urban and rural, the Office of Crime Victims Advocacy at the state, and child advocacy centers. And shortly after the task force was created, we launched a community outreach and engagement process, understanding that it's not possible for 25 appointed members of the task force to represent all of the diversity of survivors across our state. So we have reached out to many community organizations and are spreading the word about the existence of this task force, and meetings are open to everyone. Everyone's willing to or able to participate, and we encourage that. And in terms of our objectives, we are required to develop guidelines to improve community coordination in response to adult, adolescent, and child sexual assault. Before I go any farther, I do want to define what I mean by community coordination. There are several disciplines that are often involved in the response to sexual assault, from law enforcement, patrol officers, to investigators, detectives, prosecutors, judges, community-based and systems-based advocates and service providers, and of course, the community surrounding the survivor. And when we think about coordinated community response, we want all of those people, all of those disciplines who are responding to be on the same page and potentially communicating with each other as appropriate, depending on what that survivor needs. And we want the same level of care and trauma-informed victim-centered practices to be in place wherever a victim or survivor presents, whether that's reporting at a hospital or to law enforcement or to a neighbor or a friend. And developing better coordination across disciplines looks like identifying existing gaps in trauma-informed victim-centered care, recommending best practice protocols for disciplines involved, recommending opportunities to secure non-state funding for implementing community response and support, and recommending legislative policy options. That's not the full scope of everything that we're looking at, of course. That is just what the bill that authorizes our task force is requiring us to look at. We've brought in the scope, understanding that there's a lot of emerging issues that we need to pay attention to. So this slide has a lot of information on it. It is not an exhaustive list of all of the issues that the task force has identified. These are some of the highlights, certainly not everything. First and foremost, really the foundation of our work are intersections between sexual assault and systemic oppression. Black and Indigenous, people of color, LGBTQ plus folks, survivors with disabilities, immigrants and refugees all experience higher levels of violence. And there are cultural factors that contribute to stigma, shame, and preventing those survivors from seeking help. So task force members have determined that a guiding principle of our work is to center communities that are disproportionately affected. In terms of the medical response, we know that there are a shortage of trained sexual assault nurse examiners. We're seeing a shortage of nurses nationwide, but especially among folks who are trained to gather forensic evidence from victims and survivors. There is a lack of sustainable funding for training those nurses. And when we heard from nurses that are doing this work, burnout is really common. There's a lot of vicarious trauma and just a general lack of support for folks. There's not a statewide infrastructure of support, and there's not an infrastructure around the distribution of sexual assault kits. So there's some hospitals that don't have sexual assault kits, and survivors are presenting there and not able to get the full spectrum of care that they deserve. And then finally, around the medical piece, there's a lack of clarification around consent for medical forensic exams for minors. Minors are, we've heard different instances of minors who are presenting in hospitals, and nurses are required to get the consent of a parent or guardian for them to move forward with the full sexual assault exam. And if they can't contact those parents, minors are being turned away in certain instances. So the task force is looking at a change in the current statute to allow minors age 13 plus to be able to consent to that care for themselves so that they're not turned away. In terms of the law enforcement response, we need more victim-centered, trauma-informed practices to reduce re-traumatization for folks. There are staffing shortages that are leading to delayed response times, lack of referral to community-based supports, and of course, we know that underreporting is a huge issue. In the justice system, this statistic is really alarming, and it's actually a local statistic from King County. The King County auditor did a study and found that of all of the cases, of all of the cases that move forward through the process, 6% of those cases end in a successful conviction, which is, if you're a survivor looking to move forward in a case, that is extremely disheartening and a huge reason why a lot of people drop out, lack of support for those victims. There are long wait times for case resolution, and finally, a lack of coordination across disciplines. We're finding prosecutors aren't talking to community-based advocates, and all of these disciplines are generally lacking a lot of essential coordination in order to support that survivor. Okay, so here I have a list of the existing statutes that guide sexual assault coordination statewide. I'm not going to read through this, but I am glad to share this PowerPoint and have it as a resource for folks if you're interested. There are a number of key statutes that are in place to support survivors, and this task force will look to build on those. And we're taking on this work by forming several key subcommittees. Our task force meets on average of 4 times per year. We have 2 more meetings left for the rest of 2022, but our subgroups are meeting actively. We have an age of consent subgroup, outreach and engagement, broader system response, which is to support those multidisciplinary teams, and then protocol development, folks who are writing the model protocols for the core responding disciplines. And our 2022 plans, we are in the process of finishing up model protocols and are looking for feedback and input in order to strengthen the drafts that we have. They're not finalized, but we do have drafts of model protocols for the 4 core disciplines, which we consider community-based advocates, law enforcement, prosecutors, and medical professionals. So next, we'll consider recommendations to support increasing the availability of sexual assault nurse examiners and the development of multidisciplinary teams. That's more of the infrastructure piece to make sure that when a survivor presents and is seeking help, that they have all the resources available to them and that all of those disciplines are talking to each other to best support that person and not re-traumatize them in their effort to seek help. We're considering opportunities to increase survivor engagement. All along, we've really sought a lot of input from community-based organizations and folks who have been doing this work for many, many years. And we will look to launch listening sessions shortly and are working with community groups to have deeper feedback from survivors and ensure that our final product is really uplifting those voices and centering the folks who are most disproportionately impacted by sexual assault. We'll develop trauma-informed, victim-centered best practices. That's a big piece of each recommendation. And then we will research, identify, and recommend non-state funding sources to hopefully support and implement all of these recommendations. So that's really the overview of the Sexual Assault Coordinated Community Response Task Force. I know I put a lot of information out there, but I'm really happy to answer any questions or clarify any information. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Lauren. Are there any questions from the audience? Feel free to type in the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask Lauren. And if not, Lauren, do you have a contact that they can email you if that's okay?
Yeah, yes, let me put that in the chat.
Sophia, I do have a question. Is it okay for me to ask?
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Lauren, for the presentation. I wanted to know, like, how can communities like ours and the people that are on this particular forum and their families and friends, if they wanted to help and be involved in some way to help formulate some work with the task force, or, you know, can they actually go into the task force meetings? Are they public, or are there other ways that people can be involved?
Yeah, thank you for that question. All of the meetings are open to anyone. We have lots of folks from different spaces participating and really work to make it a space where everyone feels comfortable to speak up and share their opinion. But I'm also more than happy to, you know, attend any other meetings you may host where you're talking about solutions to this issue or brainstorming. We definitely don't expect everyone to make time to come to task force meetings that can be sometimes long. I'm also soliciting input one-on-one if folks want to meet. I have a mechanism to receive feedback anonymously if folks would like to do that. I'm really open to however folks want to engage, and I'm trying to do my best to make an inclusive process. So I really value your feedback and would love to either have folks look at some of the products that we'll be putting forward in the next few months, or just to show up and listen to concerns and reflect that in the work that we're doing.
Thank you, Lauren. If no one has any other questions, feel free to email Lauren. But if not, thank you so much, Lauren, for spending this evening with us. We'll be in touch with you in your office in the near future. And I will move on with Jenny, Chim, and Chandra C with the next part of the night. Thank you.
Hi everyone, Chandra C. Can everyone hear me? I'm making sure that I'm unmuted. Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. This work is really important to so many of us. Just want to introduce myself. I'm Jenny, and I'm what some folks would consider to be a first-generation Cambodian American. I was the first of my family to be born here in the States, and I have spent a little over 30 years in the Seattle area. I'm humbled to be invited to be part of this group of other amazing Cambodian women who care so deeply about our community. A big thank you to Emma, who so graciously shared with us her work in the Filipino community in addressing gender-based violence. She has been doing this work for many years, and her sharing her expertise, knowledge, and experiences is so valuable to us as we continue to expand her work by creating and forming our own group to specifically address gender-based violence within our own community. And this portion that Mang Chandra and I will be talking about, we just wanted to go over a little bit about what our group discussed. And I just want to reiterate that we're just starting. We're just at the beginning and we're brainstorming, and we'd love to have people involved and encourage you to reach out to us if this is something that you may be interested in doing. In our work together so far, when meeting together, we have gotten a chance to learn from Emma and her team of what is considered to be gender-based violence, what it looks like, the barriers victims may have, and the psychological effect it has not just for a victim, but also their family and how it manifests into our community. For example, gender-based violence can show up as domestic abuse, sexual assault, emotional, mental abuse, and financial abuse, and even human trafficking. What is emphasized is that gender-based violence, or any violence at all, is about a person's intent to have power and control over another person against their will. And we discussed the many scenarios it shows up in. It can be between intimate partners, parent-child, or even employer or employee. In addition, as a group of Cambodian women, we discussed a lot about the social stigma and cultural ideas often associated with domestic violence. Our community is quite small in comparison to other groups in the Seattle area, and for many of us, we know each other's family. So when words gets out that a person may be dealing with domestic violence, suddenly it's as if everyone knows about our business, and then the gossip and the unsolicited advice and opinions are spread. So this alone can actually prevent a person from seeking help because they may feel ashamed or even blame themselves. Other issues include lack of financial resources and navigating the system due to language barriers. Another issue we spent some time on is substance abuse and addictions such as gambling. It is often sometimes associated with domestic violence and can make matters worse. It can be linked to personal stress that may be related to work or school. And in order for one to cope with that stress, they turn to drugs and alcohol. If left unchecked, it can lead to abuse toward their loved ones. But drugs and alcohol are not the reason a person is abusive. Again, the underlying issue is a person who is in need to have power and control, whether that be another person's action or money, and then uses that violence to maintain their control. In the next few minutes, my colleague, Mang Chandra, will share with us the slide presentation that we will briefly go over some of the things we learned as a group together in more details. In order to inform and educate our community about gender-based violence, we hope to share this information and continue the work of dismantling in our community. So, Mang Chandra.
Thank you, Jenny. My name is Chandra. I've been in the field working as a mental health clinician so many years. First of all, just for the last 3 years, I've been working with perpetrators in custody. So prior to that, I was working with the victims in Cambodia with human trafficking and with domestic violence. So I was working with victims for many years. Just for the last 3 years, I've been working with perpetrator in custody. So I have these experiences with both group of people. So I'm just honored to share with you briefly. This just there's more information than this. So just very short and brief regarding about the gender-based violence. So the question is, what is the gender-based violence? Well, according to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, it's defined as violence that it is direct against a person on the basis of their gender or sex, including acts that inflict physical, mental, sexual harm, or suffering threats of such as coercion and other deprivation of liberty. And also the gender-based violence takes places in all society and all cultures. So it's not only just our culture, our Cambodian communities, it's happened everywhere. And the gender-based violence is affect women, girls, boys, and men's lives, health, and well-being globally, so everywhere. So let me tell you a little facts about it. Just tell you a few facts about the gender-based violence. According to YWCA, in 2017, every 2 minutes, another American is sexually assaulted. And out of every 100 cases of rape, 12 leads to an arrest, 9 are persecuted, but only 5 lead to a felony conviction. And 1 in 3 girls is a victim of physical, verbal, or emotional abuse in the US. And 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence, and more than 3 women are murdered by their partners in the US every day. Just to share with you, I met some people in custody who had murdered their partners. So what's some of the types of gender-based violence? Some of the type is the sexual violence, which Lauren already talking about that, the guilt and the physical. Sexual violence such as like rape, sexual abuse, physical violence such as physical assault, battery, stalking, emotional and psychological violence like insult, degrading, restrictions on a person to have freedom, and also harmful traditional practice such as forced marriage. And social economic violence do not give the person opportunities to the service because of the gender basis, because of their gender. And what are some of the main causes of gender-based violence? According to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, gender-based violence is deeply rooted in discriminatory cultural beliefs and attitudes that perpetuate inequality and powerless, in particular of women and girls. Also, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees describes that various other factors such as poverty, lack of education, and livelihood opportunities and impunity for crime and abuse also tend to contribute to and reinforce a culture of violence and discrimination based on gender. So what to combat the gender-based violence, we need to understand its causes that are also contributing factors which serve as barriers to effective prevention and response. Some of the barriers, physical factors, which is related to the lack of physical security, poverty, or financial hardship. Social, cultural, political factors related to could be social, discriminatory, social or cultural or religious. Religious can play a big role of doing that. And also judicial barriers, which is lack of access to justice or cannot afford the legal fees, especially the immigrants who just arrived. They don't have money to afford for the legal fees. And individual barriers because of the stigma, social isolations. And also can be the humanitarian program can be an obstacle.
Next slide.
Because they don't failures to address the gender-based violence. Also, the people working in that program very not sensitive to the people. What are some of the consequences?
Oh my God, listen to this.
What are some of the consequences associated with the gender-based violence? Some of them can be homicide, suicide.
The same.
And also
Chandra, I think you muted.
oh, sorry. So who are the primary victims or survivors? The gender-based violence affects women, men of all ages and backgrounds. And women and girls are the primary victims and survivor men and boys as well. And women and girls are more often exposed to rape or other form of sexual violence. And men and boys are more likely to be recruited to be armed force or groups. I did work with some of the gangs in custody. Individuals are separated from their family, community, or lack of services to shelter, education, or livelihood opportunities are more at risk of gender-based violence. Okay, next. Who are the main perpetrators? Individuals who hold a position of power or control, others in the private or public sphere. Individuals who are known to victim.
Mute your mic.
Yeah, such as partners or family members, friends, community leaders. Individuals who are in position in authorities, such as police, prison officials, members of armed forces, and humanitarian workers and peacekeepers, they can be also the perpetrators. Okay, what are domestic violence and intimate partner violence? Domestic violence or intimate partner violence is a pervasive human rights violation that continues. Oh, go back, too fast. Yeah, that affects across the United States. This is according to the United Nations General Assembly. And just some of the cases in 2008, approximately about 5,000 violent crimes by intimate partner were committed against women. And also domestic violence is referred to physical, psychological abuse, threats, intimidation, social isolation, and social economic coercion and over another person in the context of dating, family, or household relationships. And the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence described domestic violence as a willful intimidation, physical assault, battery, sexual assault, or other abusive behavior as part of a systematic pattern of power and control perpetrated by one intimate partner against another. Next slide. So here's the domestic violence laws. Say abuse, physically hurting and try to hurt someone, sexual assault, making someone reasonably afraid of threats and behavior like harassing, stalking, and threatening and hitting someone, and disturbing someone's peace and destroy someone's personal property. Next slide. So this is the some of the tactics of the power and control by the perpetrator. Just make some of the list. That is when a person uses this to control a person: intimidation, emotional abuse, and using male privileges, and also academic abuse, using threats, physical abuse, and many more. And the cycle of violence, just to share that with you, because the cycle of violence is add up every year. So the person have a relationship, the first year can be just say using the words. The next year they can use the hand and pulling hair. So the tension builds and it's a cycle, and at the end until one of them either die or going to being arrested. So the cycle of violence is continue and add up the tensions and it's really severe. later on. Next. So just like Jenny was saying too, domestic violence is not caused by mental illness or genetics or drugs, alcohol, victims' behavior or relationships. It's caused by the power. A person want to be in control and to have power over another person. Next. So why do the victims, survivors stay? We always ask these questions, and as professional workers, sometimes I ask that question, why? Well, one of the things, because it's their first love. They love a person. That's why they stay. And sometimes they hope that this person will change and fears of their life. Sometimes they feel shame and guilt what had happened, and also financial dependence. Sometimes the culture say, do not leave the woman. When you leave, nobody, the culture said, no, do not leave the woman. And also religious. And God said, do not leave, not divorce. So that's why they stay. And also sometimes the threats of deportation, despite of immigrations, and lacks of knowledge of American legal system. I have 2 cases. I part of the involvement, not involved, just reach out to help out because they don't know a lot of resources in the community. So they are crying for help. And also the fear of law enforcement. So the child protective services, especially if they have children, they're afraid that child protective services will remove their children. That's why they stay. And there's many more of why they stay. Okay, next.
Well, Chandra, I just want to give you time check. We do have only a few more minutes. Thank you.
Yeah. Lauren already go over the sexual assault. So why don't we skip, go ahead, skip, keep going for, yes, because she's all, that's good. Go back. Yeah, let's talk about this one. Because Lauren already talking about the sexual assault. So let me, we were talking about the victims and the survivors, because for the last 3 years, I've been working with the perpetrators in custody. Remember, just to share that with you, you might already know that they also the victims of the domestic violence before they became the perpetrators or batterers. They also need services. So in my county, Santa Clara County, they do have services. If the person who involved in the domestic violence, they are required to take 52 weeks batterer intervention program on perpetrators, and also attend counseling. And they also have received counseling in custody, because I provide mental health counseling crisis, but they do have programs for them. And when the last 2 years, so she shared that little note, working with the perpetrators, they do need our support. They do need help. They want to change. They don't want to get into fight their wife or abuse their wife, abuse their children. So the services, they do need services. They do need support also, because they are part of the community. Yeah, they do need support. Okay, so next slide. Okay, who are primarily responsible for these forms? Well, actually, I would say it's everyone, all of us. We can play different parts of our talent, gifts, education, or professionals that we have. And knowing that the national authorities, such as legislative, Lauren, and she's representative of the states. We need to be part of the community to stop this violence. So I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to pass on to Jenny to close our sessions for this part.
Thank you, Mom Chandra, for sharing all of that with us. You know, this work is an ongoing work. And one of the things that as a group together that we talked about was the lack of cultural relevant resources that are available in our community, but that's not to say that there isn't any at all. And my colleagues Charm and Mary will share some of that with you shortly, but one thing we know for sure is that groups such as ours play an integral part in the healing process and getting the resources directly into our communities. Some of us shared our own personal stories of abuse and times where we have found ourselves helping a friend or loved one dealing with it. We choose this work because we are inspired to help our community, and through personal experiences, we understand that this can be also a form of healing as well. Sometimes because it is so personal due to the nature of this work, it can be triggering. Being in the role of an advocate can be mentally overwhelming and sometimes even dangerous. So we spend a lot of time talking about keeping ourselves safe and keeping ourselves mentally healthy and physically safe. It cannot be emphasized enough about the importance of self-care, such as therapy, when involved with heavy work such as this, even for those of us who are considered to be veterans in the field. With that said, I'll go ahead and give the floor to Mary and Charm, and thank you all again for joining us and showing interest in our work. We hope you are inspired to be part of the change that would be of great benefit to the Cambodian community. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Charm Sok, and I'll keep this brief because I know it's where like time is sensitive right now. So I'll briefly introduce myself. My pronoun is she and her. I am very happy to be a member of this cohort, and I'm happy to have all of you here today with us. As a survivor of domestic violence, being a part of this forum is very dear to my heart. And before we get started, before I introduce you to give this over to Mary, I just would like to briefly go over some ground rules for discussion. We are here to commit to learning, not debating. Please listen respectfully without interrupting others. And this is a safe space for everybody. So now I'm going to hand this over to Mary.
Thank you, Chum. Hello, everybody. My name is Mary Meng, and I use she, her pronouns. An honor to be a member of Spean Rajana cohort that support the Khmer community. I'm super glad to have you all here. Today, our goal is to learn more about gender-based violence and to outreach to our communities to bring awareness and support each other. And here's a list of our local resource. Please take screenshot or picture of this page for your reference. And thank you for sticking with us to the end. And we can use this time to answer any questions or that you all may have. While we're waiting for to see any question that you have in the chat, I do have a question to ask. What you all think? Do you think there is a gender-based violence problem in your communities, in where you live now? Do you think there's any gender-based violence that's happening that you want to share or that you know of?
Everybody's so shy. This is why we gotta have more combos on this topic.
Well, in our community is not is being so shy. Any of our cohort members, colleagues? Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
repeat the questions?
Do you think there is a gender-based violence problems in your communities?
Yes. Yes, gender. I can share your experience. Many years ago, I was this part of the do not give me the opportunities to volunteer and help out. I don't mention the group, it's just the experience that I had was that because I'm single, not married yet, so I cannot be part of the women's group leaders. This is many years ago, and the reason I'm sharing with you, and then I reflect back to the women's group, they're not growing. So just give you that example that because of I was being rejected, based because I was single, or I'm still single and I'm still not married. So even though I have a master's degree in social work and many years working, so I just want to share that. I thought that it's feeling rejected, feeling discriminated. Okay, so I just want to share that with you because this is in our community and our culture. I'm sure it's happened to everywhere else too, which is sad. So I think we should allow women and girls opportunity to to use their gifts whatever they can. Poverty, because in our community or in any society, lack of education, poverty because we not utilize other people, we not give them the opportunities to grow and to be part of using their skill and all kinds of stuff. So I just want to share that with you from my experience. Anybody else?
Yeah, I can add. So I think gender-based violence does happen, and it can happen not just within the household, but even at your workplace. I think that gender-based violence, it's a taboo topic, so we don't talk much about it. And that's why we're like a little quiet right now when we're asked that question, because it just brought to the surface. And a lot of times when it is like within the household or within the workplace, it's kind of kept a secret. And I think that this forum is a good place to start with talking about these topics, educating about it, and kind of showing that it's okay to talk about these topics. So in short, yeah, I think it does happen, definitely.
For sure, yeah, Polly and Chandra. Yes, in Cambodian community, I think we are very, because we traumatized so much from the war, and then we think we can tolerate a lot more. So domestic violence, we can survive the war, we can survive this. So we just, bite our tongue and just live with the suffering without trying to seek help or getting support from our communities. So Cambodian, especially our community, we're very, it's a taboo type thing. So we don't talk about it. So this is why we need to bring this awareness to our community, especially because of the problem that we've been like kind of culturally, traditionally, it's something that we don't talk about. And it's great that we able to bring this out to our communities.
Thank you, Mary.
I'd like to also add that gender-based violence also impacts LGBTQ plus communities and trans-identified folks as well. They are also there's a lot of violence against communities that identify as trans. And so part of our work should also include conversations around trans and LGBTQ plus community members, which we'll do. But yeah, Mary and also Charm, I know that we are coming to the close. Do you have anything else before I do kind of close us out?
Oh, I just have another additional, when we talk about different community, there's community of disability and aging, also a part of the victims group. Okay, so you can hear, you can all see sometimes people just don't talk about it due to many reasons. So there's communications, there's language, and there's also emotional and mental health and some other reasons that people don't talk about it. So I just want to ask you all, be an eye and ear when you recognize that someone might be experiencing this issue. What can you do? What can you do? That's a big question, right? You can, yeah, we all have a choice. Do nothing, and you don't change anything for yourself, and nothing change for others. So you decide, but we have resource, even if it's limited. We do have connection. We need to play that role of connecting people to a safer and better future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary and Charm, is it okay then? We just want to honor people's time. If I can go ahead and close out.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. Really big ups to Emma for being able to fund this project from the Filipino Community of Seattle and for the City of Seattle housing. HSD, Human Services Departments. And I'm really happy to be able to work alongside Chandra Charm, Jenny App, Jenny Tim, Mary, Olivia, Polly, Sophia, Sarah, and Amanda. I think that's everyone's name so far. If I miss anyone, I'm sorry. And so I want to thank you. They've worked so hard on this to put this on you all. And thank you so much to Lauren for being with us to really share what's happening at the Attorney General's office. I see you, Ming Sutia. You just turned your video on. You're not slick. I see you. Hi. And we're really happy to bring people together. Please keep in touch with us and whoever connected you to here. We look forward to having a conversation with the Congresswoman. And also I saw that Council Member Jeannie Cole was on with us earlier, so we'll be connecting with her as well. Thank you, Velma Valoria. She's on, former state representative. She dropped the first human rights bill in the state that got replicated throughout the nation. And we will be having another session in the fall. We will be working with the Temple in person, and it will be basically helping to go in and talk with the communities there during Chumban. So please look out for that. And I know in August, we'll also be doing another series with elderly folks so we can have a conversation with them. So thank you, folks. If you want to reach out, I'm happy to put my email in here so I can just route it to the team. That way you have a central point of contact, or you can just contact whoever also connected you here. With that being said, it's evening. So many different words. My only goes that much. Thank you, Polly. Thank you, everyone. We'll be in touch and have a wonderful time. And we look forward to continuing this conversation with you all. Thank you, team. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, my friends, for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.